Did you know that there are only 3 questions that you have to answer to figure out compatibility with your mini skid steer and any attachment on the market? My name is Mike Reese. I've been in the heavy equipment industry for half a decade. I sold over $7 million worth of heavy equipment. I had an e-commerce company that grew by over 100% every single year that it was open. And I built and now run Matchpoint Intelligence, a fully universal compatibility matching and analytics engine for heavy machinery vehicles and attachments. If you have a mini skid steer and you're looking to buy an attachment, or if you have a company that sells attachments, there are only 3 questions that you have to answer, and they're all based around the laws of physics, because that's all that matters in reality. The first one is, can the mini skid steer physically connect to the attachment? The second one is, can the mini skid steer power the attachment? And the third one is, can the mini skid steer lift the attachment? So let's dig into can connect, right? That's the first thing that we usually run into, because if you can't physically hook up to an attachment with all the components that are involved, so including the hydraulic hoses and any electrical harnesses and stuff, it doesn't matter how perfect the attachment is, you're not going to be able to use it. On a mini skid steer, you usually have an attachment interface, some sort of mount plate that you'll be able to use to physically hook into an attachment's mount, right? This is not standardized across mini skid steers, although there is a universal standard that has been built, but there are some manufacturers that don't adhere to that. You'll typically see the main thing that mini skid steers use called the Mini Universal Quick Attach, or the Mini Universal Plate. This is built by Toro Dingo. They have expanded it to most manufacturers utilizing this, but there are some manufacturers like Bobcat, who has like the Bobcat MT plate, or ASV and Terex, which use like the Terex ASV Terex mount. Kanga also uses their own proprietary mount system. So you want to just make sure you know with your mini skid steer what you actually have. And with the attachments that you're looking at, you're going to need to know what mount plate they either have or can be built with. The second thing is going to be around hydraulic hoses. So if this is a powered attachment, you're going to need to connect hoses from your mini skid steers, like ports, so your inflow, outflow, and case drain, and then the attachments intake and outflow and case drain on their motor. Right? This is usually standardized. What the industry does most of the time, they use something called a flush face quick connect or a flat faced quick connect. These are generally industry standard in terms of the way that the connections happen. You just need to know the sizes of the ports that you have. The port sizes are also roughly standardized in terms of like inflow, outflow, and case drain. They're generally around the same sizes across all manufacturers, so it makes it a little bit easier, but you do just want to make sure that you know exactly what you have and confirm it with the manufacturer if you're purchasing, or if you're the guy selling it, make sure you know what the attachment you have is and make sure you know what the customer's machine actually operates with. The last thing around Can Connect is going to be the wiring harness. So if you have any attachment that's powered that has like a third function of some kind, or something that switches over the flow from one function to another, which uses like a hydraulic an electrical process to make that switch, you need to know what wire harness that your mini skid steer has in terms of like how many pins it connects with, or if there's like an aux port or something like that, if you can use that. The other thing that you'll see commonly if you don't have something like that, you can usually plug into the cigarette harness on your mini skid steer. So there is an additional way for a wiring harness to be made that's generally universal across all mini skid steers. It just plugs into your cigarette harness, but you want to use the OEM wiring harness if possible, because that's what goes to your joystick controls. Now, the second question, can it power it? Mini skid steers use hydraulic power, right? And most powered attachments also run off of hydraulic power. That's generally industry standard. So the things that you're going to need to know are the hydraulic flow and the hydraulic pressure of your mini skid steer. These are given as one number, and you're going to need to know the hydraulic flow range and the hydraulic maximum operating pressure of the attachment's motor. This is given as a range and then a maximum operating pressure as one number. So for your mini skid steer, most manufacturers have it on their website. You can go and like look on their website, look at the specs for your mini skid steer, and you'll be able to see like, hey, if I have standard flow, I have 8.3 gallons per minute. And for my maximum operating pressure or my overflow pressure on my mini skid steer, I can see that it's 2,500 PSI or 3,000 PSI, something along those lines. On the attachment side, you'll want to look at that if you're shopping online, you want to look at that on the page. Or if you're speaking to a dealer, you're going to want to ask them to make sure that your mini skid steer's flow is going to fall within the range of the attachment's motor. On the attachment side, it's given as a range. It'll typically say between like 6 and 16 gallons per minute and a maximum pressure of 3,000 PSI. As long as your machine's flow falls within that range, then you're good. And as long as your machine's pressure is under that maximum operating pressure, then you're good. Obviously, going overflow or underflow is going to either damage the attachment or not get you the performance you want. And going over pressure is going to damage the attachment's motor as well. Now, let's talk about, can it lift, right? The only thing you really need to know here is that, I mean, this is kind of like first principles, right? If you can connect to an attachment and you can power an attachment, you're golden. But if you can't physically lift the thing, it's not going to do you much good. But there are two things that you need to know about the way that this information is presented by a manufacturer for your mini skid steer. And they're usually given as two separate numbers. The first number is going to be your overall lift capacity or your tipping load. They're called either one. It's the same thing, but different manufacturers describe them differently. Now, this is not the number that you use. The tipping load says that this is the maximum amount of weight that you can physically put on the skid steer until it tips over. And that's not what you want to go off of, because that's dangerous. What you will want to go off of, manufacturers will call the rated operating capacity. Now, on mini skid steers, this is generally given as like 35% of the tipping load. And the reason that they give you this buffer here is because if you're using a mini skid steer and you go up a hill, down a hill, sideways on a hill, and you're carrying like a bucket with material and stuff like that, you don't want to fall over. Mini skid steers don't really have ROPS, ROPS, rollover protection system, the way that skid steers and some tractors do. So it's very dangerous if you go over this number. Please make sure you're looking at the rated operating capacity, not the tipping load, when you're figuring out if an attachment is going to be too heavy for your mini skid steer or not. And vice versa, if you're the guy selling this, you got to know this stuff. There's no way around it. You do not want to get someone hurt. You know what I mean? Like that's not a realm that you want to be playing in. The second thing you need to know about lift capacity is that for powered attachments, it's not such a huge deal. You only really need to know about the weight of the attachment itself. But for attachments that carry material, like buckets and all the varying types of buckets, you're going to need to know both the weight of the material, fully loaded, and the attachment itself. Buckets are usually given as like a capacity, like a strut capacity of X amount of like cubic yards. And you can pretty easily figure out like how much dirt or mulch or whatever it is that you're using weighs in that amount of cubic yards. And you just want to make sure that the attachment's weight plus the weight of the material is under your rated operating capacity so that you can operate safely. If you found this stuff helpful, like I said, my name is Mike. I run Matchpoint Intelligence. There's an even easier way to do all this, which is just using our software, which does all of this for you. You just put in your machine. It will tell you right away if something is compatible, and it hooks into e-commerce and rental companies so that you can just enter your machine and it sees with all your attachments if this works or not. Go to matchpointintelligence.com, select your company type, go down to the bottom of that page, and book a call with me if you'd like to learn more.